Hi everyone, and welcome back to my No Buy Year. This video is going to be the second installment of consumer things that make me mad. So I was mad and now I'm furious. A lot of these things were informed by your comments on the first video, so if for some reason you didn't see that one, although some of you might even be here because of that initial video, which did surprisingly well, I guess people like to watch people complaining online, you can go watch that first one up here. But let me get into this list. There's going to be at least 10 things, probably more. We'll just see how many we end up with as we do the video. I'm also going to throw caution a little bit to the winds, maybe make some off-the-cuff comments. We'll see what happens. I'm going to start with the category of personality trends of consumerism. So there's gender trends, gender-based trends like girl math, that girl, it girl, I'm just a girl. There's a bunch of girl-related trends of consumerism. There's also some guy-related trends of consumerism. You ever see the dude wipes? I don't understand how this works on anybody, how identifying as a certain gender is a hot button point for consuming in a certain way. Why do razors need to be pink for women and black and blue for men? I mean, we don't all fall prey to these traps, right? But companies still produce with these traps in mind. And that's kind of what grinds my gears. I recently talked about seeing a STEM toy for children marketed towards girls, right? STEM for girls. This, I think, is totally unnecessary, and I think is actually feeding the problem of segregating girls and guys in the fields of STEM. So, personality-based trends, gender-based trends, the concept of guys saving 3 months of salary for an engagement ring is kind of playing into this as well. Based on how you move through society, how you identify, these trends of consumerism have existed for years and years. There's even that story about how when cigarettes wanted to become more popular, wanted to sell more, they started a campaign on how to get women smoking. And so they made it more attractive to women. They marketed as far as keeping you slim and things that women of the time valued. All of this just makes me mad. And it's all the more pervasive the more social media infiltrates our daily lives. I've just had enough of it. I think it needs to stop. Along with personality trends of consumerism, anything with core at the end of it. So cottage core, fairy core, underconsumption core. To me, that's another kind of personality trend of consumerism. It's based on putting yourself in a certain box or fitting your way of presenting to a certain aesthetic. I guess it's kind of an aesthetic trend, right? All these are aesthetics in a way, and as soon as something becomes a core, it's almost like here's a package of stuff you can buy to put yourself into the core of this trend. I guess pun intended. And I don't like it. I think it removes individuality, it removes creative thinking, it takes away one of the greatest things about being a human, which is our ingenuity and our creativity, and it packages it up in ways that we can just be the same as everybody else. And for some reason it works. I don't know if we feel some kind of security in buying the same thing as everybody else, or having a box to put our trends and desires and thoughts and feelings and personalities into. But let's stop that, okay? Let's break out of these boxes. Let's stop with saying that certain aesthetics are fairy core or it girl core or whatever cores you're dealing with, and let's just be ourselves. Let's just do our own thing and base our own self-cores on things that we genuinely like, things that we experience and collect through living our own lives. We don't need to prescribe to any kind of system of aesthetics to be more valuable, to have better style, to have better stuff, to make our spaces look nice. We can do that based on our own lived experience in our own personal, unique, and more valuable way. And you can't buy that. You can't buy a lifetime of experience. You can't buy the choices that are informed by your experience trying this certain thing in this certain area in this certain way, or watching the movies you've watched, consuming the music you've listened to, you know, the media that's not influencer based, right? Form your identity through things that are not consumer trends. Please, I beg of you. This one's directly from a comment about how consumer trends turn good impulses into bad things. Or, you know, the feeling of wanting to look good, wanting to have good hygiene, wanting to look put together, wanting to level up in any way. It turns all of these impulses that could be good things, right, into bad or consumer-focused pursuits. There's something to buy to solve any problem you have. Anything you want to do can be made easier by buying this thing. No. We need to stop that. We need to foster the good impulses of humanity in ways that are not centered in consumerism. We need to have that as the first option in our mind, the easiest option. It might not be the easiest option. Maybe buying something is always going to be easier, but we need to have the values that line up with the cultural shift in not buying as the first port of call, not looking for something to want and to buy and to solve our problem. We need to lean into the creative impulses. Again, it's what makes us human. Let's lean into our humanity, people, and help each other if we need to. Bond together as a community, connect, prioritize these things that we can't replace with anything that is available for purchase. Another one from a comment, Etsy stores. So Etsy is one of those online marketplaces that used to be full of handmade crafts, right? So artisans, designers, artists, people who make things, woodworkers, pottery people, painters, people who sew. They used to have this marketplace where they could sell their wares and it would be authentically handmade, more sustainable, more slowly produced. And now it's full of knockoffs, it's full of drop shippers, and what's more, their designs are being stolen. The designs of the original artisans are being stolen, used on Etsy, used on other bigger companies like Shein and Temu, and this makes me mad, it makes other people mad. Thank you to the commenter who left that suggestion. Anytime someone steals a design from a small business, that's a time to get mad, especially if it's a large corporation looking to make it in a cheaper way and undercut the actual person who made the design and basically sell it out for them, right? They didn't even get the royalties from their work and their ingenuity, their idea. So it's kind of like a double whammy of bad. The original creator doesn't even get to reap the benefits of selling out in a way. And then the angle of the drop-shipped items still having the label of handmade or artisan is also just super frustrating because you just never know these days. There's no way to know. Even at local craft markets where you go in person, sometimes you get a table full of things that were clearly not made by the person selling the items. And that's frustrating too. We're having to approach all of our consumer decisions with a lot more critical thinking. And while this is not bad, don't get me wrong, right? I got some comments that were a little annoyed at me for complaining about it instead of taking personal responsibility. I'm taking personal responsibility. That's why I'm here doing a no-buy year, right? I realized I needed to change. I'm doing the work of change. I might be hypocritical, sure, but I'm at least open and transparent about it. Anyway, making consumers do this level of critical thinking because the production companies are so shady and taking advantage of terrible practices, I think is a huge problem. It's something that I'm mad about. And I think it needs to stop. I think this is where capitalistic regulation comes in, right? I'm not anti-capitalist. I'm not advocating for socialism or communism or any other ism, but I do think that capitalism can be better regulated so that consumers are not burdened with the entire onus of researching everything we have to buy to see if anybody was exploited during the process. That just seems ridiculous to me. It seems counterintuitive to the values of, again, humanity, of good for the majority of people on Earth. And when we are okay with exploitation to serve a bottom line, and by we I mean large companies, when companies are okay with this, it forces consumers to be the ones who make all the choices. And some consumers are not going to be able to do that. Some consumers who, for example, live in a food desert can't make better food choices. Some consumers who don't have the information that some practices are exploitative or whatever aren't going to be able to make the better choice. Some consumers who don't have the means to purchase the more sustainable version or to go thrifting or to do other practices that can avoid fast fashion or cheaply made goods that are designed to break, they can't avoid it, and therefore these companies are targeting the vulnerable in the population because they know there's a market for this kind of thing. And if we were to regulate exploitative practices, then at least these choices wouldn't come with those consequences. Because the consumer is not choosing to exploit somebody else. It's not a direct consequence of their action to purchase. It's just supporting it with their dollar. And I just don't think that's a fair responsibility to place on every consumer of any goods that are produced by these big companies in society. Another comment I had about the planned obsolescence was that even if it's not about the obsolescence of the product, the culture is such that it's normalized to buy the new iPhone every year, right? We don't look at people like they're crazy for upgrading their accessories, their Apple ecosystems every time something new comes out, or at least the majority of society doesn't. I look at people like they're crazy for that, right? Because I ain't got that money. But, and I also don't have the values that line up with replacing my tech every year. But you're not a social pariah if you replace your electronics every year or buy a new car every year, you know, trade in your old car and get a new one. These things are normalized. And that kind of makes me mad, to be honest. Not only because impressionable people might see this and want it too, right? It does look aspirational if it's presented a certain way. Certain communities, I've read comments on social media too, certain communities are kind of more embedded in this than others about kind of wealth flashing or status signaling, I guess, through the stuff you can upgrade, the stuff you can buy, the stuff you can finance even. And I just think that needs to stop. I think any pressure societally to upgrade, to pursue the next thing, to signal status through stuff needs to stop, because it creates an environment of normalization of this. Not because the individual is absolved of all responsibility of opting out, right? We can all opt out, okay. And, even if that's not strictly true for some categories, let's just say we all have personal responsibility to opt out. However, creating the society that normalizes these things, that thinks it's okay, that enables companies to produce this way, to release new models every year and know that they can produce such a quantity that will be used. It's different if they produce a new model every year and people don't go crazy over it, and only those people who need the upgrade will take the upgrade, and then you don't get upgrades that are minute or that are just a new color, or I saw complaints about the latest iPhone being not better than the old one. So there are things like that that are enabled because enough people will take the upgrade. So let's cut it out, people. Along with electronics and upgrading comes the category of cheaply made electronics and new plastic. And in my life, this kind of comes most in the category of children's toys. And it does kind of make me mad that new children's toys are produced all the time. New children's toys with cheap electronic parts and cheap plastic, new plastic. We don't need any of this stuff. Those electronic components, those metals, those resources are better served in actual needs of society. And we don't need the overconsumption that is represented in creating cheap plastic goods, cheap electronic goods. It's not just the kids' toys. It's like the $50 e-reader on Temu that's not actually going to work. The knockoff MP3 players, these are adult toys too. Any gadget that does something that we don't really need, the cocktail mixers that have electronic parts, the Ninja Creamies or whatever, some of these things, I'm not saying if you have one of these things, you're a bad person or you shouldn't have it, but the abundance of quantity of these options of things on the market is something that I think needs to be better regulated, and at the very least have some kind of standard of quality, right? So maybe the Ninja Creamies and the cocktail drink mix makers stay on the market, but the $20 Temu MP3 player gets cut, right? Because you can't have a reasonable standard of quality on something like that. Maybe the knockoff kids toy with the harmful lead in it gets cut, or whatever it is. Like, maybe the regulations can take off the bottom of the barrel of the options here so that they're not on the market for consumers at all. They're not being produced at all. They're not using exploitative labor and resources at all. That would be nice, in my opinion. Is it possible? Who knows? I got a fair few comments about unavoidable plastic, how the grocery store urges you to bring your own bags, and then they want you to buy a reusable bag made out of more plastic, or how you buy produce and it's wrapped in plastic, how you buy something in the mail and it's got 5 layers of plastic for one thing that may only need 1 or even no layers of plastic. And even if you want to avoid the waste, if you're trying to live a zero waste lifestyle, fit all your trash into a mason jar, you better not ever order anything in the mail, because you're going to fill that jar up with packing peanuts, and even if they're biodegradable peanuts these days, you're going to fill it up with the plastic and packaging in 2 seconds if you order one thing online these days. And if you go grocery shopping at a traditional grocery store, again, forget it, because your produce doesn't come unwrapped all the time. Even things at bakeries I've seen can have an individual layer of plastic around them. And it's like, why are we going to a bakery in person if we can't just have our goods naked, right? I want that thing without any wrapper on it. Staying in the grocery store for a second, ultra-processed food makes me mad. I recently finished the book Ultra-Processed People. I did a video kind of including that here. And thinking about this food that's not really food, just kind of substances chemically engineered to target that bliss point of fat, sugar, and whatever else it is, salt, that keeps us coming back for more. and no nutritional value, mind you. And so in the food deserts, this might be all that's available as well. You might have a KFC and a McDonald's down the road, but your only grocery store is one of those mini marts with milk and bread and other processed snacks. It's targeting, again, the vulnerable populations. And there's even further, you can go with this argument when you talk about organic foods versus not, with the pesticides, a choice to avoid the use of certain pesticides or GMOs or whatever is of concern these days. So there's multiple levels of processing in food, ultra-processed nature of food, the ultra-processed nature of some foods that also is starting to make me mad the more I find out about it, and the more I find out about what some of the companies that make this food have done in the past, like the whole Nestle baby formula scandal and all that. You can maybe read about it if I've found an article. I'll link it down in the description. But the thing about ultra-processed food that gets me really mad is that they didn't exist until they were made. So let me unpack that a little bit, because that's one of those seemingly obvious statements that makes no sense, but also makes a lot of sense. So anything ultra-processed is a man-made human creation. You can't just go plant an Oreo tree in your garden. You can't plant a Dorito bush or whatever. These things were made by humans, engineered by humans, again, to target that bliss point that keeps you eating them and wanting more. Same with things like fast fashion, right? You can't grow polyester in the ground, right? It has to be man-made. These things were not options to want until humans made them. And that, to me, is one of the abuses of modern technology. That's kind of like one of the signifiers of an abuse of power, an abuse of production, an abuse of marketing and consuming in consumer society, right? It's one thing to take farming and agriculture and make them into industries where a group of people devote their time to growing more tomatoes for humanity, growing more corn, growing more vegetables, raising more animals for food, essentially. It's another thing to take these food substances and engineer them into man-made substances that are nowhere to be found in nature, nowhere on our radar to want, until we create them and market them hard. And that is starting to make me mad. The way that it's taking advantage of things that humans will want, humans will desire, that both the production of the product, the formulation, and the marketing are trying to directly target to create repeat consumers and people who consume a lot of ultra-processed food, things like fast fashion, things like cheaper tech and plastic products. There was another comment about storage units, which enable more stuff, enable keeping more stuff, buying more stuff. Much of this stuff is things that we don't need. Clearly you don't need it if it's in a storage unit away from where you live. So the storage unit industry has been used and abused, and the industry is just taking advantage of people who will buy into this need, right? This need that's not really a need. So it's not the fault of the industry necessarily for taking advantage of this, but I do get a little bit mad thinking about the abundance of storage units these days, how many resources are wasted in building these things and maintaining these things, and how much money is wasted in paying for these things, when really it's a sign that you have too much stuff, that you have to keep some of it away from your immediate location. And the solution is to not buy that much stuff in the first place, first of all, and then second of all, if you've already ended up in a position where you have that much stuff, you've got to find a way to responsibly declutter that, ideally. Or, worst case scenario, cut your losses, throw it away, and never do that again. And I don't want to enable the culture of convenience or throwaway goods when I say things like that. The number one emphasis there is to never do that again, to change your consuming habits to be more conscious so that you never end up in that place. You never end up needing a storage unit. I mean, they might be useful in certain scenarios, like if you're moving, if you're living somewhere temporarily, but abusing them when you have somewhere that you permanently live that is designed for a human to live in, right? Most homes will probably have a closet or room for a dresser with a set of drawers, closets in the hallway for certain odds and ends, or drawers in the kitchen, right? It's not that we live in these houses that don't have any room for stuff. So if we can't fit the stuff that we have in our everyday lives in the place that we're living, I think it should be taken as a sign that we have some kind of problem with consuming. Not that we need an exterior solution to put all of this stuff. I think I got a comment about hauls in general, and let me run with that one for a while, because the acquisition of new stuff being glorified and elevated as something to watch on social media is absolutely bizarre. And I used to be in the camp of people that would occasionally watch these things and occasionally be influenced to buy based on watching this. So I'm not speaking from a holier-than-thou perspective on this topic, but the things you buy are the least interesting thing about you. And again, taken directly from one of my comments. My friend, the things you buy are not the things I want to know about you. They're not interesting. They don't even necessarily tell me how you're going to use those things. It's just showing some stuff. Like, it's a show and tell without the tell, right? Without the stories behind the goods. You know, sometimes maybe a creator will talk about why they're buying something, but we can't see it used in their daily life until we maybe come back and see it in the rest of their content. But a lot of these influencing channels aren't showing the use of the stuff, they're just showing the buying the stuff, the must-haves from Amazon, the maybe you should consider buying these next fashion trends, right? It's focused on the newness, on the revolving nature of these trends, where there's always something new on the conveyor belt to pick off of it and take what you like. And it's not focused on leaving the consumerist narrative, leaving this society of constant upgrading, constant seeking and desiring for something new. And I think if haul culture could be eradicated as a start, this normalization of going online and saying, here's a collection of stuff that I bought, that would be a step in a positive direction. And I think at the time of filming this, I have some more comments on this video that I will just make sure I address. What about Black Friday? So I would argue that any occasion that has been co-opted into a sales event is something that makes me mad. And it's not just Black Friday. If it were just Black Friday, I might actually not be mad, because if it was just one time a year, you know, before the holiday season, where many people do enjoy giving gifts as part of the tradition, maybe I'd be okay with it. But because it's not just Black Friday, it's Memorial Day, it's Labor Day, it's back to school, it's 4th of July, it's St. Patrick's Day, it's Valentine's Day, it's the New Year. Every occasion is a sales occasion these days. So we know, a lot of us consumers know, never buy something at full price, because there's always going to be a sale coming. However, the sales induce more spending as a whole, right? That's why they keep on doing it. And so I don't think it's altogether a good thing. I don't think on balance it's better that we have all these sales, right? We think it's serving us, we think it's enabling us to buy something at a better price, but no, it's just an onslaught of incessant marketing, incessant FOMO, incessant insecurity driving to get us to try to buy something new that we don't actually need. Another comment here. You need a spool of thread, a single one. It's packaged with a threader and several needles, which aren't even the kind you want. So again, when you want a single thing and it comes in a pack, single mouse pad, but they only come in a 3-pack. Too many things are marketed in volumes I don't want. Yes, absolutely. And again, it's just a marketing tactic. You think you're getting a better value, a better deal. Some people would buy the 3-pack over the 2-pack or the 1-pack. And I guess that's become the cultural norm. Again, you can't just buy one single high quality mouse. You got to buy 3 inferior plastic cheap mouses, mouse pads, whatever it is. This comment also mentions holiday stuff, especially the plastic single-use stuff, and all the holiday stuff is on sale for way too long. Yeah. Agreed. I don't want to see Christmas stuff around Halloween. I also don't like the normalization of excessive holiday decor. I just think decorating for every holiday is kind of ridiculous, and it's not something that we need to do in normal cultural society. Like, this is one of those things where the third place is another loss for our community, for the festive spirit of occasions, right? So part of the reason I think a third place is valuable is because it's a place where we can communally enjoy these things, enjoy time together, but also enjoy festivity. So for example, the school can be decorated for Halloween in some way, shape, or form. My home does not need to be. And, you know, Christmas to some degree as well. We go way too hard on Christmas decorations, and especially single-use decorations, and it's acceptable to buy something to use for one season and throw it away. I'm not saying that it's acceptable for everybody watching this video or for every person out there, but in society, these things are produced, these things are purchased, and then they're thrown away. So culturally, it is acceptable, it's still being done, and that does make me mad. I got another vote here for ultra-processed food in the form of cooking videos that are made with non-food items. So crushed Oreos, Cool Whip. People make recipes where they melt chocolate inside the packaging, which is arguably toxic with the plastic melting into the melted chocolate. So again, vote for ultra-processed food. Yeah, don't do it if you can avoid it. Not trying to be food elitist here. A bunch of advertisements, so you pay for ad-free YouTube and you get a bunch of ads from the influencer themselves. You can't avoid it. This person says, our motto is, no money leaves this house without a darn good reason. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Another vote for unnecessary packaging. Influencers buying thrifted items. So this is another hot button topic, right? Where resellers have usurped the thrifting market so that regular consumers can't go into a thrift store and find decent things anymore. You can go online and they're being resold for $20 over the thrifted price or even more sometimes. And it makes thrifting less accessible for people who are trying to be more sustainable but can't afford sustainable brands. Got a comment about makeup. Each to their own, I guess, but I do think that the pressure to wear makeup is a problem, right? Societal pressure to appear a certain way. I totally agree. It's something that makes me mad as well. The idea that you or your life is imperfect, but this is how you can be perfect like me. So that kind of marketing, yes, you're not enough, you don't have enough. I hate that as well. It makes me mad. And last one here, specifically related to home ownership with HOAs. So yeah, HOAs that require grass lawns or other kind of forced practices that might require you to buy things like lawnmowers or landscaping or other kind of yard features. I think I've heard of HOAs that also like dictate the number of trees you can have in your yard and things that seem really kind of ridiculous. I think this person in particular was annoyed about the grass lawns, how they're really a waste of land. And they're mad at the fact that some HOAs prohibit native wildlife lawns, for example. And I can get on board with that too. Anyone telling anybody how to live their lives or do stuff with their stuff is probably going to get people mad. Myself included. I'm probably going to make some people mad with this video. Finally, the last thing that I found fascinating about sharing that first video about things that I was mad about, I got some comments that some people actually like targeted ads. And I have a feeling that that's going to be another whole rant, so I might actually stop this video here and save that for another day. But if that's interesting to you, you can come back, you can subscribe if you feel like it. I don't usually advertise that as an option, but those of you watching this probably already are aware that you can subscribe if you want to. If there's anything I've missed, if there's more things that make you mad that I did not cover in this video, feel free to share in the comments. More consumerist things. Let's continue this atmosphere of complaining in this video. I have enjoyed reading the comments on the first one, and I don't doubt that there are many, many more things to be mad about in our consumerist culture. All right, bye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.